In this live code video, we'll take a look at how to concatenate two different data sets. The two different data sets included in this example are the Google Books dataset and then a new Goodreads book dataset. We can take a quick glance at both datasets here. The Goodreads dataset is a bit different. It includes a few extra columns. If we want to concatenate these rows successfully, we want to take a look at the columns and make sure they match. There's a little bit of setup here. First, we'll import both datasets. We're going to make sure that we see all of the columns. And then if we remember, the Google dataset had a lot of duplicates. So this first section of code is just cleaning the dataset. And then down here, just to simplify for this example, we're only going to show the first 10 rows in each dataset. Remember that ilog works exclusively, so the row with index 10 will not be included. We'll get rows 0 through 9. First, what we'll want to do is take a look at the columns. One way you can do this is to call in the dataset and then use the info function. And we'll print this out. And let's take a look at both data frames. I'm going to move this over and give ourselves some room. So this top section lists all the column names of the first dataset, and this bottom section lists the column names of the second dataset. You can see that they differ quite a lot. So we're going to need to do two things. We're going to either drop a column if we don't need it, and we're going to drop from the second dataset, or we can rename the column to make sure that they match. And we can rename in either one. Let's just do the second dataset for both dropping and renaming. So I'm going to set up the code, and then we'll fill it in as we kind of look at these different columns. So we're going to call in the second dataset, and we'll put what we want to drop in this code. We need a parentheses and a bracket. Now this is important. We're dropping columns, so we have to include the parameter axis equals 1. And we want this to be permanent, so we have to add in place equals true. We're also going to set up the code to rename columns. So we're going to call on data frame 2, and we're going to use the rename function. This one works a little bit differently. We use parentheses, and then we use a parameter, columns equals, and put this in curly brackets. Then we also want this to stay permanent. So we're going to use in place equals true. Okay, let's take a look at the columns. If we see down here, we have book ID, but we don't have any book ID in the first one. So let's drop that. You'll want to make sure it matches exactly. So it's lowercase book and then capital ID. We have title down here and title up there. Those match, perfect. Now down here we have authors, but up here we have author. It's not plural. So what we want to do is we want to replace authors in the second data set with author. Next we have average rating, but up here we're just using rating. So let's change that one as well. Now we can wrap these lines if that makes it easier to see. Let's try that. Yeah, that's a bit better. We also have ISBN, which is like the barcode of a book, and ISBN 13. This is not included in the first dataset, so let's drop these as well. We'll drop language code as well, because there's not a match up here either. As you can see, there's quite a lot of cleaning to do before concatenating these datasets. The next one we have is num pages. This can go hand in hand with page count, so let's rename that. We also don't have text reviews count, so we'll drop that one. And it looks like we'll have to rename these last two as well. Publication date is going to become publish date, and publisher, actually that one's good. Publisher matches. So we just have to redo this last one. Let's rename publication date. What we could do now is take this code and bring it to after this drop and rename and make sure we did everything correctly. All right, let's double check. Well, this is a good example because it looks like I missed one. Here they have voters, but down here we've got ratings count. That's going to be the same thing. So we need to change one more. We're going to change ratings count into voters. Well, it looks like this is a good debugging exercise because there's one more that's incorrect. num pages didn't change. Let's take a look at why. Oh, here we have num page. We want that to be num pages. There we go. That looks much better. Now, it's okay that they're not in the same order. And then the first data frame includes price, where the second one does not. We're going to leave that just so we can see what happens. Now we can concatenate these. We call in the pandas library and use the function concatenate, which is concat, parentheses and a bracket. Then we put in the two data frames that we want to concatenate, df and df2. And let's print this. All right, here we can see we actually have rows with indices 0 to 9 from the first data set, and then we have rows from 0 to 9 of the second data set. And let's take a look at the price column. So the price is included for the first 10, and then we get NAN for the second 10. So we don't want these repeating primary keys. We don't want the repeating IDs. So what we can do here is we can add in .reset index. All right, and now we have brand new indices. Perfect. Let's take a look if we wanted to, instead of concatenating as extra rows, which is the typical way to use concatenation. Let's see what would happen if we wanted to concatenate these as additional columns. What we would do here is we would add in the parameter axis equals 1. This is used a lot more rarely, and I'll show you why. So here we have two columns of indices. We have a title column here. We've got another title column here. Now we have two author columns, two rating columns, and so forth. There may be a reason to do this if you had additional columns, but you would also need to make sure that all of the entries were in the same exact order to make this work. So this is used a lot less frequently. Now let's take a look at how to use joins. We're going to use two smaller data sets here. In data 1, we're including a first name, last name, and a location of a customer list. In data 2, we have a first name, a last name, and then we're going to have the product, the quantity, and the price of an item that they purchased. Let's print these two data frames just to get a good view of what they look like. Here are the two data sets. You might notice that we do have a few entries that repeat. We have Finn here, we have Finn down here. We've got Crystal here and Crystal here. So these columns we want to merge together. We want to merge the information into one single row. We call in the pandas data frame and use the merge function. Then we want to list the two data sets that we want to merge, df1 and df2. Let's choose a column to merge them on. Let's go with the last name. Then we have to put the method in which we want to join them. Let's start with inner. Now what inner join will do, will only keep the entries that exist in both data sets. So like we saw with Finn and Crystal, they should be included. So let's run this, add the print statement, and then run it. And here we go. It looks like there was only 4 customers that existed in both data sets. And we do have Finn, we do have Crystal. Now take a look at this. Did you notice that we have first name X and then also a repeat of first name Y? This is because not only does the last name match, but the first name matches as well. But we didn't tell Python to look for that. Now we can tell Python to look for that so that we don't get this duplicate column. Instead of including just one column in our on parameter, we can make this a list. So we can include the first name and the last name. Close the list and let's run it again. Much better. That gives us some more room too. So let's take a look at the other joins now. Let's try outer join. Now outer join is going to include every single entry from both data frames, but it will merge the ones that they can. So it will merge for Haley, Finn, Randy, and Crystal still. Now because there were only 4 customers in both data sets, we have a lot of NaN values, a lot of missing values. Let's try a different join. The first data set included the location. What if this was the most important thing and we didn't want any of these NaNs in the location? We can call a left join. Left join will keep everything from the first data frame and then add on what it can from the second data frame. So we still have a few missing values, but none of the missing values are the location. Now, what if maybe the product was the most important? So the product was included in the second data frame. So instead of a left join, we can call a right join. Or we could just change df1 and df2, swap those out. Either way, you'll get the same thing. Let's change this to a right join. All right, great. Now the product column is full. There's no missing values here, even though we do have a few missing values elsewhere. Well, hopefully that's helped and you can move on to the next activity.